And here he is.
Good morning. Oh, we hope so.
Oops, we hope.
Oh,
So you see what I mean?
Yeah.
There we go. No, we're still on. Keep going.
Yes, we're having mouse troubles at the moment.
Yes,
they're everywhere, you know.
Yes.
And this is a lovely pub, and they certainly don't have mice.
No.
But the odd mouse does creep in occasionally.
Which Disney figure was it they used to call them Mises?
Oh, yes, I can't. Oh, Disney. No, there's something to conjure with. And then there was our friend Stuart a few minutes ago talking about the chipmunks.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, why did he choose the chipmunks, I wonder?
Perhaps they were in the top 10 again this morning.
They used to sing, didn't they? The
Yes.
chipmunk. I remember.
Yes.
And he was suggesting that some BBC, and we were talking about the BBC today, if we could.
Yes, we can talk about anything, John.
Well,
we are our own bosses.
You see, today is February the 15th. I think we're aware of that, following the hysteria yesterday of February the 14th, of course. But February the 14th was special to me and to the people of Brighton because 56 years ago, man and boy, we opened BBC Radio Brighton. February the 14th,
56 years ago, you said?
56 years ago.
Yeah, right.
At the time, the Steve Walker, the man that we lost this week, the broadcaster, Steve Wright, I beg your pardon, Steve. He was 14 years of age at the time when we opened in 1968. And it was the very first local radio in the whole of Sussex. And it was unbelievably exciting. I was there at the start with 3 others. And I think one of them is a lovely bloke called Mike Matthews, who may occasionally watch from his home somewhere near Reading, I think it is. But they were very special days. And the manager's name was Gunnell, Bob Gunnell. And he was an innovator as such, former BBC man in London, devised a program, title of which I think you would quite like. It was called Home This Afternoon. That's rather nice. Yeah. And it may have related to the fact that in the early days of broadcasting, there was a light program and a home service as well. Right. This is the BBC Home Service.
Yes.
So this was called Home This Afternoon. And as a result of that, and I think the frustration really of Broadcasting House, Bob saw the future of broadcasting in radio and local radio specifically. He was a Brighton man, a former councillor, and so it all fell into place. He got the job, and as a result of his getting the job, I got my job because I applied to him. Did I have experience of Brighton? Well, I'd been there for a day trip, I think I told him. But I said my family originated in Brighton, and we've discussed it before. They were there in the days of Prinny, running a coffee shop and a library.
So, and a brewery. Or was that Littlehampton?
The brewery was in Littlehampton and Chichester. Yeah. But the other side of the family were in the Brighton. And one was a school teacher, a librarian, who then moved into Brighton and married a lady. And when they got together, they actually formed and opened this coffee house and library right on the seafront, Marine Parade in Brighton, around 1792 or 3, I think it was. Wow. So there's history there. And that impressed Mr. Gunnell, I suspect, and the fact that I'd done a bit of broadcasting because I'd lived for a while in America. And so, as Stuart was saying, of course, it's the way the BBC speak. And Martin Jarvis, we mentioned Martin Jarvis, an excellent, excellent actor who lives most of his time now in America, but was over here only yesterday, I think it was, where he met the Queen, Camilla, and others relating to and celebrating Shakespeare, of course. He was a great Shakespearean actor. So that all goes back to the early days in Brighton. Martin had links with Brighton as well, Martin Jarvis. And the last time I spoke to him, he was actually in a play and appeared at the Theatre Royal. And I met him backstage and we had a little chat about the school days. We were both at school together, for example. But Radio Brighton was terribly important. It was a breakthrough. Up until that point, Brighton had been served by either Southampton or even as far afield as Plymouth, right, which was ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so that was the southwest, and then the south was Southampton, and Brighton, nothing. So Radio Brighton really opened the doors to the BBC in that area, and is still there today, although it's now called Radio Sussex. And I have with me a little badge that I brought along, two badges actually. We all used to wear badges in those days. And this is my BBC badge, which you can probably see. We did sort of outside broadcasts. We did a lot of outside broadcasting because, as you know, and we've discussed before, the essence of communications is not necessarily, it's getting out there and talking to people, absolutely. Which of course is what we did with our radio card. And so we'd all wear one of these. The only other little badge I have relates to Radio Brighton, funnily enough. Again, you probably can't see it, so I'll tell you what it says. It says BBC Radio Brighton, I'm an OOW fan. Now, you may wonder what OOW, maybe various versions. I heard that. That's that lady in Poynings again. Heard that, madam? No need for that sort of language, if you don't mind. OOW represented On Our Way, OOW. And it was one of the programs in the afternoons, not home this afternoon, but we had our own version, and it was called On Our Way. It was what they called in broadcasting terms a drive time program aimed at people driving about, coming home, going places. And I used to present that program, and it had a certain following. And so a friend, one guy who actually ran an ice cream parlor in Littlehampton, he was able to get hold of a company that made badges in those days, and he produced this badge, this wonderful I'm a OOW. And so we sent these to people, and they still occasionally wear them when we have get-togethers. So that was the very, very start of Radio Brighton, and I celebrated yesterday by remembering inevitably the Steve Wrights of this world, but clearly a lot of other colleagues of mine who are no longer with us, but certainly deserve a mention and thanks too on behalf of the community for starting something that was very, very important. And I'm proud to have been part of it. And I like to think that in the work that's being done here at Mirador, for example, I think that this is all part of the same syndrome, reaching out to people, you see, absolutely. And allowing them to have a say if they want to, and allowing people like Stuart, God bless him, coming in here and having a chat before he went to the dentist. Yes. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, flexibility and
exactly.
and it keeps us surprised. We never know what's going to happen next.
And the other thing is, above all else, at a very, very dodgy time, if I may say so, and could touch on that in a moment, a reassurance too. If there's one thing people want, it's reassurance. Yeah. And what they don't get, I'm afraid, they may get platitudes on the news. They may get people saying, well, I'll pray, like Biden did yesterday, turning his attentions to Kansas City. President Biden said how terribly upset, we'll have to change the gun laws again, he said. And then he said, my prayers are with those people. And with deep respect to anyone with a religious belief, I said it needs more than prayer to sort out a situation like that. Yeah. And that really was awful. And that was last night, 6 o'clock on the news, story from Kansas City. You'll have seen it. You'll be hearing about it all the time. And I thought to myself, having lived in America and having even visited Las Vegas, for example, but not Kansas City, I thought that is catastrophic. And as for the game, perhaps we could touch on that game.
Yeah,
the game, the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
You see, I watched the Super Bowl. At least I recorded it because it went on. I mean, you may think...
Oh, it's about 3 hours.
Oh, 5 hours.
5 hours.
I mean, you may think Mirador goes on 5 hours. 3 if you're lucky.
Yes.
Now, this was 5 hours long, and I've never seen anything like it. What I did was I spooled on quickly. So I saw bits of it. I saw some of the action, none of which I understood, none of which. The commentators were absolutely hyper for 5 long hours. Unbelievable. And then on the field of play, I mean, it was absolute mayhem. And they wonder why, with great respect to colleagues who may well be watching this at the moment in the United States, like that lady, did you say in Memphis? I think you said there was a lady in Memphis who probably watches Mirador. The thing is, it just struck me that that game summed up really the razzmatazz that is America. It's miraculous, it's frightening in a way, and they have their own rules, of course. And that's the thing about America too. They have their own rules. So none of us really understand what the legislature is, what the caucus is. I bet you understand because you
lived there and worked in it. But yes, but only in a peripheral way.
Yes,
yeah.
And then the Supreme Court. And then you hear that the people who've been nominated to the Supreme Court were nominated by the former President Trump. Yes. I mean, where is the justice in that? No, we mustn't get onto that. You're quite right, sir. It's a dangerous area. But I find it disturbing, to be honest with you. And I don't like the way it's heading. And prayers may be one answer, but I think there needs to be human action too, and human reaction too.
Yes.
And in America, people should be beginning to say, I understand, interestingly, that one of the Kansas City players, a big, well, they're all big. And there was a bearded man. Can't remember his name, should do, but I can't remember. And apparently his fiance, and then they married later in Las Vegas after the Super Bowl. He was tied up with a lady called Taylor Swift. Now, I hope you've heard of Taylor Swift, because if you haven't, the entire world
hasn't.
I mean, she's just a lovely, lovely sort of Barbie type girl. No disrespect, but that's how I see it. And apparently, this is very interesting. They say that Trump is very worried about Taylor Swift because allegedly she has leanings towards President Biden. And so if she says something, millions and millions and millions of young Americans
switch their votes.
Will switch their votes, and Trump is worried and trying to point out actually that he's done a lot for Taylor Swift. But again, what that is, as so often the case with Trump, you never really know
never find out what,
because people don't challenge what he says. Well, fortunately they do, and they should do.
Yes.
So that's it.
Actually, there isn't as much challenge in American politics as there is in our own.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, just before you got here, we had James McCauley on.
Oh yeah.
McCleary on the council leader. I was saying and then Stuart came up with this piece of information where the Greens were marshalling their troops to go and vote for this Phoenix thing. I said to him, we're becoming like Chicago. Lewis is becoming like Chicago. Pork barrel politics, and it's beginning to worry me enormously because talking to James McCleary, who is a nice enough chap, a nice young man. But yesterday, in response to several questions, he said, I don't know, because I'm not part of the Greens now, who are part of the governance. And those things that he did know is he was being apologetic for, not giving answers as to why they existed. So when I heard the news this morning about the Greens marshalling there, I said that this... I'm really getting quite concerned about local politics because, as we pointed out last week, the most people who in the district aren't computer literate because we're over 50% over 50. So we're not of the computer generation. So what do the council do? Well, we put that on the web. We put that on, yeah. So nobody finds out, and they happily go on and do their own thing. And I find that terribly disturbing.
It's part and parcel. I'm sorry, we're bound to say this. You're going to say, "Oh well, look at it, you old men. I mean, you're all the same. You're always complaining." The point is, there's a lot of strength in our complaints, if I may say so. Analyze it, think about it. I mean, computers, we don't even go there. Mouses or mice, I beg your pardon, mice.
Meese.
Yeah, meese. Yeah. Meese. Chipmunks. But I mean, above all else, the thing that hits me, of course, is that what politicians now try to avoid basically is confrontation. In other words, that don't come and talk to me, for example, and for example, the doctor, try and see a doctor. No, we'll ring you up. Hang on, you can't possibly analyze what I've got by ringing me up. I need to see you flesh. Remember flesh, doctor? Flesh and blood.
Yes.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
John and I did not conspire about this, by the way, because I did a rant earlier in the week about this very thing. So when I say that a lot of other people are concerned about what's happened to our local surgery, you can see that there it is, living proof.
Well, absolutely, unprompted. I mean, people sometimes suspect, because we do find that there is a link between what we're saying. That's only because who we are more than anything else. No, I plan to come up here in the mornings, but that's about as far as it goes. And then I sometimes think, as I did today, just changing the subject. We mentioned Las Vegas. And I think I have said before, I don't think you've been to Las Vegas.
No, I've never been to Las Vegas.
No. Whereas typically of John Henty and family, I've been to Las Vegas for probably about an hour, which isn't very long in Las Vegas.
But at least you've had a taste of it.
Yes, I mean, I probably could have got married in that time, except I was married anyway. And by the way, Taylor Swift did get married allegedly. And would you believe this? Allegedly, the guy who actually married her with this big American player, well, normally dresses as Elvis when he's doing this ceremony, So prayers, God bless you, and all the rest of it. However, I brought a little touch, a tiny touch today in my famous bag of Las Vegas with me.
Oh, well done. I was going to ask what was in the bag.
This is going to be so exciting, I cannot tell you. I have many of these, actually, but at least 4 or 5 of them. And you've no idea what this have you, Keith?
No,
none whatsoever. No. Well, I brought with me, and I hope it's allowed in this pub, because it may not be, a form of gambling, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, can you see that exactly? Now, this is the sort of thing. The one thing I do remember in Las Vegas was a line of about 4,000 of these, with elderly ladies sitting on stools with a whole bowl of pennies, putting them in, down, putting them in, down. And then they go and see Taylor Swift. Now, this one does work, ladies and gentlemen, and it's even got a little red light that has been known to flash. So if it flashes, I'm afraid we all have to leave the building immediately, because that could be an emergency. So shall we give it a go?
Yes, let's give it a go.
Right, here we go. You don't think this is going to work, do you? There we are, and it didn't, but it might the next time. No, it should have done it. And it is. Look at that! Isn't science wonderful?
And did a lot of money come tumbling out of that thing?
Bar 777, and it does. Yes, you can actually put money in the top, and the money comes out there. And there we are. So I thought,
wonderful.
Isn't that lovely? And I do collect these, so I've got about 4 or 5 of them. And one with all the dollar signs as opposed to pounds, shillings, and pence. And that represents, in a way, Las Vegas.
Yes.
Perhaps a little unkindly, because there is so much more there. There's also a very good car hire company, which was the reason I went there, because I had to change my car. And I was told the only place I could do it in the Rocky Mountains at the time was to go to Las Vegas. So I drove in there, I handed the car over, and about half an hour later, they handed me the exact replica. Amazing story. So typical America.
Yes, yes.
No one could argue with that.
Just before we go any further, if you've got 4 or 5 of these, why don't we get a couple more? Hire a space on Brighton Pier, put a pianola into it, and have a summer of gambling.
Well, brilliant idea. Nothing would give me greater pleasure than to do that, I can assure you, because my whole interest in slot machines and amusement and arcades and putting a penny in the slot relates to a pier. It was Eastbourne Pier. When a child, I would be given a shilling, 12 pennies. I would go to Eastbourne Pier and I would spend the entire afternoon. There was nothing sleazy about the arcades then in those days. And there was, I've often mentioned, I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but the one bloke I did like was on Brighton Pier, the Palace Pier. And he was wearing a really filthy old brown overall with a load of keys all round his belt. And he'd be inside a little hut, hiding, basically, hoping no one would wake him up.
Yeah.
Smoking woodbines, I think it was. And you go in there, you can just see him through the smoke. And you say, "Excuse me." "Yes." One of your machines isn't working." "Oh, no. Oh, all right, hang on." And he'd come clump along. And you know what he'd do then? First of all, he said, "You've been playing with this." He said, "You've been messing with this." "No, I haven't. It doesn't pay out any pennies." "Well, it will do now." And he goes, thumps it, and blow me, all the pennies start pouring out. And of course, I used to know one machine that, I shouldn't admit this, but you never lost. So I would spend some time on those. And it was wonderful. I mean, it was freedom, and it was an afternoon. And bearing in mind, I was probably about 9 or 10 years of age, but my parents were quite happy then to allow me just to go off and spend the entire afternoon on my own playing the slot machine.
And there was no suggestion that you would get hooked at that age on gambling. I mean, it was all just good, clean fun.
Well, you could say that, although I'm sure the lady in Poynings, oh, no, wait a minute, it isn't Poynings, it's Patcham, I'm sorry, dear. The lady in Patcham is saying, "Well, you say you're not hooked, but I mean, why have you got one of those machines then?" It's not the same thing. That, madam, is called collecting, you see, which is an entirely different. Oh, I mean,
issued and
I mean, I am the world leading authority on collecting.
Yeah.
So if on another occasion, I think today would not be. But we could discuss the whole question of collecting. And some people say, "No, it's not collecting, it's hoarding." No, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
There's a very big difference
Absolutely.
between hoarding. And I went along, I don't know whether I should mention this, but there is a place at Falmouth, which is the University of Sussex out there. And there's a place called the Keep. And this is where they have the archives of everything. And I won't mention names because that would be unkind. But I did say to a young man there on reception that I was a bit bothered because, rather like you, I'm sure, I have a whole series of audio cassettes, reel-to-reel tape. And I said to him, what do you do with things like that? I don't want the stuff that's on it. I've got all that. But what do I do with those? And do you know what he said? And this is I can't believe, I still can't believe. "Oh, yeah." He said, "I had that trouble." He didn't talk like that. He said, "Actually, I had that trouble." He said, I said, "Well, what did you do?" He said, "Well, it was my mother's house." He said, "My mother's house." And she had all these videos, these video box sets of videos. And I said, "Yes, that's the sort of thing I'm talking about." He said, "Oh, well, I put them in the attic." I beg your pardon. In other words, some poor devil's going to buy that house in about 10 years' time, go up there and find about 5,000. And what are they going to do with them? There is no answer. It's not hoarding, it's collecting. And you should collect very carefully. Watch programs like Bargain Hunt if you must, but certainly the Antiques Roadshow, and pick up a few tips of what to collect.
Well, not only that, John, but when you get stuff in the attic, is what you should do is put in your will, "I leave my collection of two," and then it is treated as a collection and not just junk in the attic.
Well, that's all very well, but what about the person who's receiving this?
Well, that's their problem.
I see.
I don't think, to be quite honest with you, unless people who truly believe in heaven are right, is that we are going to bother about it.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's like the Max Miller. We haven't mentioned Max today, but there is some wonderful Max Miller. We've mentioned it many times. There's archive material. There's obviously bill posters, a whole range of things. And we are concerned at the Max Miller Appreciation Society. We are concerned about it. But at the same time, it has to be said that it will be of interest to other people. And it's down to them what they do with it.
Yes. But actually, if it is a collection,
Mm.
quite often, if you now put it on the internet, there is somebody out there who collects the same things.
Right.
Yes.
You're not suggesting selling, though. Well,
No,
you can do.
You can do. Yes. Yes. I
Mm.
mean, it is the one thing that I treated with great suspicion when I first started to get stuff on the web was eBay. But now I've learned how to manipulate it, and actually there are people who get rid of their model railways, and you can buy anything from this is a used guards van, and I want £7 for it, to this is my entire layout, and I want 7,000 quid for it. As a, you know, and anything in between.
But in this day of scams, isn't there a danger? I'm always scared of money being transacted.
Well, I think eBay have been very clever. What they do is you pay eBay.
Okay.
And they pay. Yes. So they guarantee it, being an established organisation now. So they hold on to the money until you've got it.
That's very interesting. We've learned something today, everybody. And in terms of scams, I mean, time and time again, day after day, you hear these stories. The one around February the 14th, of course, was the romantic one.
Yes.
You know, people seeking a partner who can make bacon sandwiches. Yes. Exactly. And then, unlike this wonderful flesh and blood gentleman, these people don't exist, or they're in Slovenia or somewhere, and they send photographs of people like me, and the women think, oh, that's all right, isn't it? And the man doesn't even need bloody exist. It's a funny old world out there.
Yes. It's actually, I have a triple, as they call it, a triple lock. They must be gorgeous. They must have a decent bank account, which I have to have sight of.
Yes.
And then the bacon sarnie kicks in.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, does that work? I mean,
well, I've had 2 out of 3, but never had the 3 out of 3.
Well, I don't know. It's a funny world. You know, meeting people and relating to people. You know, it's not easy. And the trouble is that everybody, doesn't matter who they are, they only have to switch on the news or try and get an appointment with the dentist. You know, everybody's stressed today, and that doesn't help in any relationship.
No, it doesn't.
And that's why, sadly, so many people revert to drinking and drugs, you know, which again is a sign of the time. And how much of the trouble in America is based on drugs and drinking?
Yes.
Oh dear. Better ask your colleague in America.
I actually ask you. I am drinking. The older I get, I drink less. I mean, I've never been a compulsive drinker.
No.
But under stress, I must say that my intake.
Yes.
For instance, in Northern Ireland, I would put stuff away.
Yeah.
But I can now have a bottle of wine, have a glass out of it, and it'll sit there for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, I hear that. I agree with that. And I mean, I gave a little treat yesterday for myself. Sylvia had a small glass of something, and I had a draft Guinness.
Oh,
I like draft Guinness. I enjoy that. In fact, I'm right out of my. Anyone out there sell draft Guinness? Right. Okay. I'll be along there a bit later on.
Yes. Well, actually, I decided on a bit of nostalgia.
Oh, really?
And for my dinner, I had Spam.
Oh no! Wow. Did you really?
I did indeed.
My goodness, that's better than corned beef, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Oh. Yes.
Oh, do you have mustard with it?
I had chutney.
Oh.
And it was a chutney out of a hamper that my daughter bought me for Christmas. So it was a special custom-made chutney. Yes.
You know, I mean, you can watch all these food programs. There are so many of them, and all you need
simple one. The only thing is, I didn't have any heartthrobs come through and say, "Oh, I love you because of your choice of meals." So, oh dear,
there must be some lovely people out there who enjoy Spam as well. I mean,
far more enjoying bacon sarnies.
And isn't it a tragedy that we're now abusing the word Spam?
Yes.
I mean, how dare
Dare
they?
they?
Yeah, and the spam is a wonderful thing. Forget all these other derivations. The English language is being murdered, madam.
Oh, don't get me onto that.
Oh,
Don't get me onto that.
no.
Oh, John, I posted a thing on this next door, and somehow it did sneak through eventually. But I was describing what it's like when you have Parkinson's and you fall down,
Oh, yes,
and what it's like trying to get up.
Yeah.
And I said I was looking for a synonym for carpet, and so I said shag. I crawled across the shag. And the algorithm or logarithm or whatever that it decided that was naughty and banned it. I got really upset, murdering the English language, taking away perfectly legitimate good words.
You've got to be so careful, particularly when you're in this way. I mean, we choose to be exposed in this way, but there is always a risk, I imagine. That gentleman going past looks a bit glum. He needs cheering up, doesn't he?
Yes.
He's got his eyes on the ground and he's thinking.
His head bowed. And
see, that's the trouble. People need lifting. And I'm sure Mirador does its bit. But there ought to be more and more, and less phony uplifting, because you see that Super Bowl, in my view, was pretty phony.
Yes. Having said that, John, one of the things that I have tucked away in my little bag of tricks to say that I did was I actually watched the very first Super Bowl.
Really?
Yes, and even the people watching it, I was in Canada at the time, even the people watching it didn't realize its import, I don't think, except that, oh gosh, here is something new, the merger of two leagues. And I can remember we went into the basement den of a chap that I knew from rugby, and we watched this thing and beer and so on and so forth. Yeah. So there's Super Bowl, whatever it was, 75 the other night. I didn't watch, and I should.
Well, my problem with that, I mean, I said a sport through it quickly. I simply don't understand, particularly the way the game stops the whole time, and so many people encroach the field, guys with microphones, the whole thing. To me, it seems a process,
Yes.
And it seems artificial. It's very physical too, of course, hence the helmets and all the rest of it. No, I mean, and you mentioned rugby. I mean, rugby, some people say, is it the same? And the answer is no,
not at all.
No.
But one amusing story about that is that there was a thing called the World Cup played for on the west coast of Canada, or west coast of America, actually. And people say, oh, well, how pretentious. But it wasn't. There was a newspaper called the Vancouver World, which gave the World Cup to the best team in California against the best team in British Columbia. And that always turned out to be the university teams. And the California coach was a chap called Doc Hudson, who applied certain American football things. So they would come up and they would have on the subs bench, and there were no substitutes in those days, but they would have on the subs bench another 15 people. Yeah. And the people who played for British Columbia would say, we didn't recognize the team playing us here in the second half because they pumped in everybody off the subs bench.
Well, that's it. I mean, when I was in San Francisco, and by the way, the other team against Kansas City was the 49ers from San Francisco. When I was in San Francisco, my old school friend John Doughty had an antiques emporium there in San Francisco, and he was playing rugby in San Francisco in the sort of leagues you just mentioned. So it's a small world.
Yes. Actually, the San Francisco 49ers have always been my team, simply because way back in 1958, when I first hived up on the shores, I didn't know anything about it at all. And my landlord would invite me into his home on a Sunday for lunch and to watch American football. And the San Francisco 49ers couldn't win a damn thing. They lost absolutely everything. So, of course, the English penchant for the underdog is they became my favorite. But the program at break, where as you say, they run on and off the field, is the commercial used to be, meanwhile, back at the ranch. And that's stuck with me all these years of American football. Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
In the 50s, 1950s. And of course, I was in San Francisco in 1960, which was a wonderful time to be on the west coast of America.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I've got to go, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, I'm glad. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that I gave you enough information that he was in Angmering, but he wasn't. And here he is. Yeah. And as usual, we've had a nice boisterous thing. The only thing that I'm disappointed in is you promised to bring a Dad's Army book back again this week and give us a chapter and verse on how to get it and so on. So will you do that next week?
I'll remember that Dad's Army next week.
Yes,
absolutely.
Because actually I romped through Dad's Army last week. It was loads of fun. Yeah. Not only that, but we always seem to get back to Itmar. Yeah. And Mrs. Monalot, isn't it? Monalot.
Yes.
It's being so cheerful that keeps me going.
There's the bus. Remember last week?
Yes.
We saw that same bus. I think there's someone trying to get up, recruit us as drivers for the bus.
I think
that's the second time at this time in the morning with a telephone number which I read out last week.
Yes, that's right.
And in fact, they had 14 applications as a direct result of that from places like Ipswich. The bus has just gone past, and I shall follow it. And if I can get on board, I will tell them that I might like to be a driver.
Well, why don't we actually put in an application, a joint application?
I'll mention you as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we wanted a bus with 2 steering wheels.
That would be really good. Yeah. Absolutely right. Yes. By the way, driving today, I drove yesterday out to the Keep, remember?
Yes.
In the rain, and the madness on the A27. The speed, and people wonder why they had major collisions.
Yes.
The speed is horrendous.
Yeah, phenomenal, isn't it? I actually was out on my scooter yesterday, and I was dripping when I got home. And that's the second time in 2 weeks, and I don't seem to learn, which is sad. But there we go.
We both learning as we go, and we hope you are as well, everybody. Nice to see you on a Thursday morning. And there's a gentleman going past. I'll follow him, I think, at pace.
Follow the leader.
Bless you. Bless everybody.
And you too, John. Thank you for dropping by.
It's a joy.
And we will.
We will.
There we are. We'll just. There he goes. The little imp himself, John Henty. Plenty of Henty and good fun again. And it is now 11:05, and time for us to say good morning from this morning. It's been a bit bitty, but interesting stuff nonetheless. And it just shows you how Mirador is out and about in the community now. And Mirador Television, broadcasting from the Black Horse, where you will find a pub quiz, a very good pub quiz, the second Sunday in every month. You will find the Six Nations on big screen for every weekend that the Six Nations is played, which certainly is this month and next month. And every Sunday throughout the is a delicious Sunday lunch, very nicely cooked, very tasty, and really it is zenith right now, I think. Yes, indeed. So that is at Mirador, and we're going to say toodle bib, and this is who we are and where we're broadcasting from. 5 days a week, with a whole variety of people, interesting people. On a Monday, we've got the two barristers, Philip and Richard, who kick off the day. Then we go to France with Harry Atherton, who's refurbished several castles and sold them on to people like Michael Jackson. He's done such a great job at them. And then normally, although she's not well at the moment, Liza Page with the alternative view. On Tuesday, there's just me, but then every other week we have Kit Wood from the Lewis Old Grammar School, who talks about the history of this school. Started way back in 1502, and it started down in the park in the South Overgrange Park. On Wednesday, yesterday is a little bit of a departure because we had Stuart had James McCleary in, the former leader of the council and the prospective candidate for the Lib Dems at the next general election, and that followed John Prideaux, who is an artificial intelligence expert, and he takes us through bits and pieces of AI that you wouldn't find elsewhere. You just wouldn't find. And he has as his mentor Philip, and we end off that with Dr. Mark Maybe, who is busy developing a new university with some young men and hopes to have a satellite version here in Lewis. Then today it is John Henty, and then surprise visit from Stuart Dolby, who comes across some hot news off the press, and we're able to bring it to your attention. And tomorrow we go back to and of course on Wednesday morning we now have joining me for break the day is Susie, who is just a lovely lady, very articulate, and who has actually gone off to somewhere in Spain. We'll be back in time to join us next Wednesday morning. And we then Melissa from New York and Suzanne Musho from New York, and sometimes Stephanus, the head of a New York opera company. So it's all go and lots more besides. So do join us, because whenever you tap in, you're bound to find something that will please you. All right. Until tomorrow morning, we will say toodle pip, and we'll see you tomorrow. From Lewis, in the Black Horse Pub.